Hey guys, Savage Joy here with Real Progressives. I want to just do a quick introduction of the video you're about to see. As many of you know, and we're looking forward to, last night I had an in-person interview with Jeff Weaver, who is who has been working for Bernie Sanders off and on for 32 years, and he was the campaign manager for Bernie's epic presidential run in 2016. I gave an amazing interview with Jeff. It was honestly over 100 I've done. It was honestly my best. And his who was there, said that it was her favorite interview she's ever seen with him because I asked questions that nobody else ever has. I did my best to represent Burners, and I asked, things that we wanted answers to. And it was awesome. It was a really great interview. However, there's not really proof of that because after we spoke for quite some time, about 40 minutes, I went to check the camera to take it off of the tripod, and apparently the Wi-Fi had immediately cut out and literally none of it showed. So let's just say I was a little upset, but thankfully Jeff's manager, Kira, who's just a goddess, saw how upset I was, and she said, no, we're going to stay after the book signing and we're going to try again. So admittedly, the new interview is not as good, but you guys wouldn't know because you didn't see the first one. So hopefully you like it. I did not, in hindsight, get to ask all of the things I did the first time. I recognized two questions that I did not ask again, because they were things I thought of during the interview the first time, not ones I had written down. However, I am hoping that maybe one day Jeff will actually come on the show, and hopefully we can kind of do something, to work out better. But I am so incredibly grateful that he humored me and actually did a second take, because he's kind of busy, and we were in Harrisburg, PA last night, and today he's in Virginia on his book tour, so it's not like he's not busy. As far as his book, I do want to say that I listened to it on audio so that it would be done by the time I did the interview. I love it. I'm not just saying that. It is freaking awesome. He addresses things I never expected him to. I went into the book thinking he was probably going to play something safe, just because of political reasons. You really don't want to piss off the Clintonites and all those, that crew. However, he, talked about things like WikiLeaks and the rigging and the Bernie bot thing, and he says Hillbots numerous times, and there were a lot of things that he talked about that was just really surprising. So a lot of things were accurate accounts of what we went through as Burners and as people who were trying to get this beautiful man elected. So I was extremely pleased with the book and how it represented. Also, I was really anxious to and excited to learn that a lot of these things they were trying to rectify and work on behind the scenes, and we never knew about it. We were getting discouraged because we thought that, maybe they don't know what we're dealing with, or maybe, it's just not priorities, but there were things in place that they were doing to try and combat things like Correct the Record and things like that. So it's really good to hear these things. I feel like I hope that this interview can give some closure to some people. I hope that it'll inspire our movement to move on and move forward, I should say. And you know, Jeff has quite a reputation of being a total hard ass, and I was so nervous. I have never been that nervous in over 100 shows. I was just trembling because I was extremely intimidated, and I know there was a lot of pressure on me because of, you know, all the burners who wanted me to ask so many questions that we needed answers to. And he was so kind, and he was witty and just very, you know, just very sweet, a very, you know, gentle man, and he tolerated my countless hugs and countless requests to tell Bernie how much we love him. So, you know, as awful as it was, and how it's pretty much every journalist's worst nightmare to go through something like that, the fact that he stuck around and tried a second take with me, I think is just amazing, and I have a totally newfound respect for him. And as I said, I definitely would get the book. He touches on a lot of stuff that I didn't expect him to. So again, apologies, it didn't happen last night, and the Wi-Fi gave me shit again the second time, so I just straight up, you know, recorded on my cell phone, and that's why it's taking a while to get it uploaded. But without further ado, here is the interview. So I hope it's worth the wait. I'm really sorry, guys. I mean, this has been extremely hard on me, to say the least. I don't like the thought of disappointing anyone. So I'm hoping that the interview you're about to see is kind of worth everything that you know, all the waiting and what have you. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Your support the past like 24 hours, seeing how the kind of effect this has had on me has been amazing. And I really love you guys. You guys are like, you guys keep me going. So thank you so much. And here you go. Here it is. Hey guys, Savage Joy here with Real Progressives. I am joined by Mr. Jeff Weaver, who was the 2016 campaign manager for Bernie Sanders' presidential run. Thank you so much for joining us, Jeff.
Oh, my pleasure. Happy to be here.
I apologize to those who tried to watch earlier. We had Wi-Fi issues. But in any case, we are here to talk about Jeff's new book, which is incredible. I definitely recommend it, not just because he's sitting here, but because it really is very good. You talk about a lot of things in this that I was actually surprised that you talked about. And the beautiful thing about the stuff you talked about is that Bernie actually commented that anyone who wants to know what went on behind the scenes of our campaign has got to read this book. So he has fully endorsed your accounts. So it was good to have clarification on a lot of things. So you actually started with Bernie about 32 years ago, and you started doing things such as being his driver.
Yeah, no, I've driven the car. I've gotten coffee. I've held the signs in parades. I've marched in I don't know how many zillions of parades with him. Helped him hand out buttons. I mean, I've done it all.
And has he always been the same Bernie?
He is. He's always been the same Bernie. The issue of uplifting working people has always been the motivator for his political life. And I remember, he gives obviously people have heard some speech about income inequality and a whole host of other issues that intersect with income inequality. He used to give a speech back when he was running for governor in 1986, very similar themes, and he gave his stump speech during the presidential race. A similar speech at every venue, and he would do that back then as well. I used to tease him when we get in the car because I'd start reciting the speech from memory. And anyway, he was good-natured about it.
I can do that too, and I don't realize that when I've seen him 8 times, and I don't realize I am saying it into the camera. So sorry about that, guys. I don't realize I'm doing it. So you, back 32 years ago, there is this beautiful man, totally just totally real and amazing. But did you think it would ever come to this rock star status where, he's so recognizable, shirts, posters, just thousands of people who follow him everywhere? What's that like to see that progress?
Well, I mean, I have to say that back then, we were in a hard-fought gubernatorial race where we ended up getting 14% of the vote. And, we'd go to these small towns and be crowds of, tremendous crowds of 6 people, 7 people. And, to see 30,000 people in one place is really gratifying, the extent to which, his determination to bring his message of economic, racial, social, and environmental justice to the country has really taken off. It's humbling, really.
Sure, absolutely. This week is actually the 2-year anniversary of the DNC convention. Which I always call Occupy DNC PTSD because it is. A lot of us have scars from that week, and I was, on the outside, as was my friend sitting here, Gretel, as well as 40,000 others who were there marching for democracy and marching for our candidate, and then you were on the inside, though.
I was on the inside, these back rooms behind the staging at the convention. Yes, I was there, and it was a difficult week, I think, for people of us on the inside as well as those of you who were on the outside. We had fought a hard-fought campaign, and for me, this was in many ways the culmination of my life's work with Bernie, which has been my entire adult life, and so. It was, on one hand, the thought of how far we had come and how much excitement we had created in the country. And I mean, even now, looking back on it, the amount of change that has gone on in this country in terms of the political debate because of the campaign. But on the other hand, it was certainly, there was a great sense of disappointment that we had not won the nomination. And, at that time, I think it's fair to say that most sane people, thought that Secretary Clinton was, having secured the nomination, was going to be the president, right? And, of course, that ended up not being the case, and we've seen the result of that.
So, is there anything you would do? I try not to talk about 2020 because we're in 2018 primaries, which are prevalent and very important. But should Byrne run again, is there anything that you would like to do this time that maybe wasn't plausible last time?
Yeah, well, it's always easy to look at a race in hindsight and make, I could have done this, believe me, I go through as much sort of self-reflection and what ifs as anybody else does. And I know people on other campaigns that have not been successful who go through a similar process. What if we'd done this? What if we hadn't done that? What if, and I think one of the great unknowns at the beginning of the campaign, and I have to tell you, one of the few people at the beginning who, not that I thought we would win, but that I thought that we had the opportunity to win. Right, and I think, probably one of the few people, and that's only because I had been with Bernie for so long and understood the power of him as a person and the message that he was conveying to the nation. But it was not clear at the beginning that there would be this thunderous outpouring of support, either in terms of people coming out to rallies, certainly people voting, and certainly the generosity of these $27 contributions that would come pouring in. And so there was no way to know at the beginning of the campaign, how generous people would be. I mean, we thought maybe we could raise $30 million. Bernie wasn't even sure that would, that was a realistic number. We had a sort of fantasy number of $50 million. We ended up raising over $230 million. And so, if you had that knowledge at the beginning, the structure of the campaign and the pace of the campaign would have been much different. We ended up hiring 1,000 people in 90 days in the fall of 2015. And I have to tell you that, organizationally, that was a tremendous strain on the campaign.
Well, I will volunteer to work for you guys for free if he runs again, and I am going to do my damnedest to be a delegate this time, because last time I had no idea what it meant. But something about the DNC that I think, I know a lot of Bernie supporters are very heartbroken because of all the rigging that went on, and you do actually talk about that quite a bit in your book. And I was apprehensive when I first started listening to it, because I got the audio CD. I wasn't sure how much you would get into those things, because we're, as outsiders, we were considering maybe they don't even know. We have no way of knowing what you're privy to.
Right.
So you did touch on a number of things as people's voter registrations getting changed without their consent. So what is it like to go to a primary, to go to a state and be told, sorry, 200,000 people can't vote for you guys?
Just disappeared off the rolls, certainly.
Right.
Certainly in New York State, 200,000 people disappeared. In the state of Arizona, it was so bad, frankly, in the Republican-run elections there, that we sued the state of Arizona in conjunction with the Clinton campaign and the DNC. This is during the primaries. There certainly was a lot of acrimony in the primary, but all three of those entities saw what was happening in Arizona, which was a total outrage. They had radically decreased the number of voting locations. They had, in particular, taken locations out of communities of color. People were waiting 5 hours to vote, so that you would show up before work. You had to leave to go to work. You'd come at lunch. You couldn't vote because it took too long. You went home, and then you came back after work, and you're in line for 5 hours. And then, at some point, relatively early in the night, the media called it for Secretary Clinton. And our folks had to work very hard to keep people in line, because even if you don't win in a state, all the delegates are allocated proportionally, and so how much you win by or lose by matters a lot, right? And so we had folks, we were getting water for folks in line. I think in some places people were buying pizza and handing it out.
We were sending them,
Yeah, right.
We were donating pizza for Bernie.
And to keep folks in line, but that's a horrendous thing that's going around this country, and that's one of the things Bernie feels very strongly about. I mean, people also may remember, maybe they don't know, we sued the state of Ohio because in many states, if you are 17 but will be 18 by the time of the general election, you're allowed to vote in the primary, and that's the law in Ohio. And the Secretary of State in Ohio was going to disenfranchise all those 17-year-olds from the Democratic primary, and so we went to court along with some people in the state, and he had to back down. So during the campaign, we were, I thought, pretty aggressive in trying to open up, where there was clearly malfeasance going on by state officials or what have you. But in other ways, the system was, had structural problems. Closed primaries being one of them, which disenfranchised millions and millions of people, particularly young people in this country. So it's a real problem.
Absolutely. One of the things which gave us the indication that what we were up against in the very beginning was losing access for our phone banking and emailing and our canvassing. We had issues being shut out of the system at the very beginning, and Bern actually had to sue to get our access back.
Yeah, we had a press conference in DC, which was in December of 2015, when the DNC had shut off the campaign's access to its own data. This was data that we had, and to a system that we had paid $400,000 or $500,000 to be able to access, right, with small dollar contributions. And we held a press conference at which most of the media thought we were going to apologize and back down, and I was really more of the lean in kind of person as opposed to lean back. And we leaned into it, and we told them, look, we're going to go to court. And we went to court that night, and then right before the judge ruled, I think they saw the writing on the wall and they backed down. So, we fought very hard for the people who were working for us, because I know, there was a great sense of frustration on the part of volunteers, particularly in Iowa, because it was so close in time that we were losing valuable days, and that it was going to really hurt us. So, and the truth is, that episode, we lost the Iowa caucus was the closest that it had ever been in history, right? So, did those 5 or 6 days of not being able to reach out to voters, was that the difference? Maybe.
It was what, 0.2% or something?
Like that. Yeah. It's, incredible, incredibly small margin. So, just showing you once again that it actually matters when people vote. Like, it doesn't.
It does.
Yeah.
Well, I was also something interesting in your book. It said that Byrne actually won an election with 10 votes.
Yeah, his first election to mayor, he won by 10 votes. And, he had run against an entrenched sort of machine Democrat in the city of Burlington. And he beat him by 10 votes in an upset that, really laid the groundwork for his successful time as mayor of Burlington. And then, his election to Congress and the U.S. Senate and his run for the presidency. So those 10 voters actually had a much bigger impact on history than they could even have realized at the time.
Yes. Gretel, still good. Okay. So, yeah, that's kind of interesting the way that they inadvertently, saved us.
Changed the course of modern political history.
Yes. So, you also say things that made me kind of giddy as a burner. You said the word Hillbots a few times, which I enjoyed, because you also acknowledged, the bullying we went through online. It's difficult because our campaign was successful because of the internet in so many ways, but it also was very dehumanizing in many ways.
Yeah, no, and folks will remember the sort of Bernie Bros narrative, which I think has largely been discredited now. That the only people who supported Bernie were, 21-year-old, college boys who were, misogynist, racist, hooping and hollering. And, that clearly wasn't the case, as evidenced by Bernie's overwhelming support in the Democratic primary process, and the research that's been done since, demonstrating, won millennials of all races, his support among voters of color increased exponentially during the campaign. He won the Latino vote as early as Nevada. The polls are in the book if you want to see our polling at the time. His support among the African American community skyrocketed and continued to grow throughout the campaign. And young voters of color who were supporting Bernie became so despondent about the fact that the media and our opponents were trying to whitewash the campaign and basically write them out of existence, that they started the hashtag Bernie Made Me White as a way to try to fight back against a really false narrative. And again, the research, our polling and the research that's been done since, which is actually fairly exhaustive and detailed in the book, show what a false narrative that really was. And there was a lot of shenanigans online. Correct the Record, as spent millions of dollars in the spring of 2016 in a sort of clandestine warfare on social media to try to attack Bernie people or try to make it look like Bernie people were attacking other people. It's not to say that there weren't people who supported Bernie who behaved inappropriately, and Bernie condemned them explicitly on numerous occasions, as did I. But there was a lot of shenanigans that went on to Correct the Record and their deceitful conduct online, which really created so much distrust that as soon as the primary process was winding down, all the distrust that had been created by Correct the Record was then exploited by the Russians who came in after them. And the role of David Brock in inadvertently facilitating the Russian mischief in the general election has really never been sort of fully outlined. I talk about it somewhat in the book, but it deserves a lot more study.
You do actually speak about WikiLeaks numerous times. When they made anti-Semitic comments, they wanted to paint Bernie as an atheist because they thought he would lose votes. Really, there were so many things from propping Trump up as a Pied Piper to
Be careful what you wish for, right?
Yeah, seriously. Thanks for making us pay for your bad karma. So there were so many things in there, and so many times we wondered if you guys knew what was in there. So what was it like to read those things about what the conniving things that were going on to try and stifle our campaign?
Well, the truth is we knew about many of these things without the WikiLeaks, right? Because we were engaged in them and fighting them. Maybe we didn't do a good enough job of letting folks know the kind of internal fights that we were having with the DNC and others, but it was ongoing and persistent. And as an author, it's always a difficult choice about whether to use something like the WikiLeaks because of the way in which those emails were stolen and accumulated. And certainly, that kind of conduct, breaking into people's emails is something that I condemn. The difficulty is when you're trying to tell a story, and there are these emails do exist, and it's the same conflict that the mainstream media had in terms of do you use them if they're stolen, but they have information. And ultimately at the end of the day, I chose to tell the story in as honest a way as I could, obviously from my perspective. I'm not going to hide that. But the WikiLeaks contained valuable corroboration of what we knew was going on, and so folks, if somebody else reading a book might have made different decisions in that regard. I don't really apologize for it. It was just, but it was, I didn't think about it.
As far as the you say the word rigging a lot, and I mean I would hope at this point it's not really disputed. And one of the things that was really painful was to watch the way the mainstream media would always include the superdelegates in with the regular delegate totals to disenfranchise voters by saying, oh, well, she already won, we don't have to go out.
Right.
So how frustrating was it for you guys to see that, oh, look, she needs 100 more delegates and she's won?
Right. Well, clearly it was part of the Clinton strategy. It's not a criticism of them. It was, I think, an appropriate strategy on their part was to try to create the sense of inevitability on the part of Hillary Clinton in her election. And the superdelegates, played a big role in that. So, there's been a lot of debate, obviously, in the party about superdelegates. The Democratic Party looks like it's about to substantially reform the superdelegate process, which would be a huge victory for democracy in this country. The supporters of the superdelegate system say, well, they've never overturned the will of the pledged delegates, the people who are actually elected by people, and that's true. But the role they play in shaping the debate, in creating this inevitability argument, and in dissuading grassroots Democrats and independents in those places where they're allowed to participate, to dissuade them from participating is very, very real. It's sort of taken to its extreme. Folks will remember that the day before the California primary, in June of 2016, the AP, based on its really harassment, and this is all detailed in the book, and it really is appalling, the role that the Associated Press played in browbeating and cajoling superdelegates in order to be able to call the election before people in 5 or 6 states had even had an opportunity to vote. It really shameful behavior on the part of the Associated Press, and hopefully it's something they won't engage in again. Hopefully these reforms will go through at the DNC. But the role of superdelegates, it's not that they overturn the will of the people, but that they helped create the will of the people.
That's a very good point. What Jeff is referring to is, which I definitely recommend to get the book or the book on tape, but the Associated Press was physically calling people who were superdelegates and saying, no, we demand an answer now, because they really wanted to state that she had already won. And things have come out that they posted one thing that was accidentally dated 3 days prior. So they had this plan. They wanted her to win. So things like that, as frustrating as it was for us, I can't even fathom.
Yeah, I don't know how you deal with, the media calling, in this case, the Associated Press, and copies of their emails or texts are actually, reprinted in the book that we got from the superdelegates who themselves were appalled that the AP was engaged in this kind of conduct. So, it'll be better when it is just rank and file voters in the Democratic primary and caucus process who are choosing the delegates who are going to pick the nominee. That'll just be better.
Right, right. What you also said that as far as our emails, the DNC's list of emails, you stated in your book that we had to pay for them and they inadvertently got that list for free.
Yeah, so how it worked is, the Democratic Party has a thing called a voter file, which is, all the voters in the country, and there's a lot of information in it, like, past voting performance, whether you voted, if you've indicated in the past that you supported one candidate or another, that's all in there. And so, it is very important to have access to that, and the first 4 states, Iowa, New Hampshire, South Carolina, and Nevada, they all sell that individually. The other states are sold to you in a package by the DNC for $250,000. And you have to either give the money to the DNC or you have to raise it for the DNC. So if you have a lot of wealthy donors, you can call a few up and say, hey, would you give a big check to the DNC? And if you do, then that'll get credited toward our amount for the voter file, and we won't have to, pony it up from our hard money account. We obviously didn't have people sitting around with $30,000 to give to the DNC, and so, those $27 contributions went to help pay for that voter file because we had to have access to it.
And then you also talked about in the book how there was something where you can raise money for down ballot Democrats, and the Clinton campaign ended up only using, they took like 88% of that.
Yeah, so the DNC set up these what are called joint fundraising agreements, and they're actually very common in politics. Under a joint fundraising agreement, either a campaign or multiple campaigns, and usually a party entity, will raise money together and then split it up according to a predetermined formula that is limited by federal law. So a candidate can only take $2,700 from an individual for an election. But with a joint fundraising agreement, you can go in and ask somebody, say, for a $500,000 check, and $2,700 of it goes to the candidate, so much goes to the DNC, so much goes to the state parties and anybody else who's participating in that process. And the joint fundraising agreement can pay for its expenses out of the money that's raised, because there are expenses obviously with raising money. What was unique about this arrangement that you're referring to between Clinton campaign, the DNC, and a number of state parties, was that money was raised into it, and then under normal operating procedures, that money would then be paid its expenses, and then that money would be dispersed to the parties. In this case, the money was used inside the joint fundraising committee to re-raise additional money, primarily online, which generates only small contributions. The result of which is almost all the money goes to the Clinton campaign, because they got the first $2,700 of every contribution. The state parties got almost nothing. In fact, I've talked to a number of state party chairs who were very upset that they had even agreed to participate, because it was just a sham in order to raise the dollar amount that can be given to the joint fundraising committee. We were offered a joint fundraising agreement with the DNC, and we said, well, that's fine, but this is a vehicle for raising large dollars, and we don't have like a bunch of people who are prepared to give large dollars. And they said, well, don't worry, we'll invite a bunch of people who have large dollars, and as long as Bernie comes to the event, then we'll credit him that money, right? And of course, they never set up a single event. It wasn't a serious offer.
You in the book, you do talk about like the different ways that things were, not just how we have video evidence of the actual cheating, but the different ways things were rigged. Like, how about the empty podium? Like,
well, that's the Trump podium. Yeah. Well, I mean, what was it? And the truth of the matter is, the people who are most outraged about this are, if you talk to Republicans who ran against Trump, they're much more outraged about this, because they were actually trying to win a primary against Trump. The media, the problem was there is a business imperative for the media. They have to make money. They are in business. And Trump was good business because he said outrageous things, horrendous attacks on people, and it created viewership or, readers or listeners. And so the media was always very attentive to Trump. They provided him much more free coverage than everybody else, frankly. and they would, a candidate would be speaking. It could be Bernie, it could be Hillary, it could be could be Cruz, it could be anybody. When they announced Trump was going to come out at some point, they would cut away from people's speeches and go to an empty podium waiting for Trump to arrive, and then they would run his event live from start to finish. Nobody else got that kind of treatment by the media. And the truth of the matter is, in many ways, Trump is a creation of the mainstream media in this country. The exposure that he got, the free coverage, was incredible.
Yeah, I think I've heard over $3 billion worth of free coverage. I don't know if you've seen the stats. I assume you have. In 2015, it was estimated that Bernie had 10 minutes of coverage.
Yeah, well, on the major networks, obviously we had more coverage on the cable news stations.
Sure.
But in terms of the evening news on the major networks, very, very little. I mean, this was a period that you'll recall people referred to as the Bernie blackout, right? When
Absolutely.
Bernie couldn't get on the television, and we had supporters. I just watched a video the other day of supporters out in California protesting at CNN because of the Bernie blackout.
Awesome. Yeah, I remember when Bernie would start doing these town halls, and CNN would put in the corner like, Bernie Sanders live in 2 hours, and they'd have a countdown. I was like, oh my God, we finally got our countdowns. Like, it was exciting.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, look, again, it was all about selling advertising, and Trump was just better for business in that regard.
Mm-hmm. Right on. One of the things that people, progressives, what have you, really wrestle with is the fact that for some reason they believe if Bernie would have confronted Hillary with all the rigging and everything at the convention, that somehow he would magically be president.
Yeah, I mean, look, I have to tell you, as somebody who is as partisan for Bernie as anybody else in the world, I think if there was, some of us had thought there was even a remote chance that some kind of contest at the convention would have resulted in his nomination, we would have advocated for it. But it was so clear that that was not the case. He did not have the most pledged delegates. So even if he got rid of the super delegates, at that point, he was not going to get the nomination. We were confronting Trump, which I hope everybody agrees now, having seen what he's done in office to so many marginalized people, that he's a disaster. He's a disaster for working people, he's a disaster for people of color, he's a disaster for the LGBT community, a disaster for women. It's like, and to go in there and to create a big, contest at the convention that was not going to result in a substantive change, I think would have been a mistake in my view. And the other thing was, we were working with the Clinton people on some serious policy compromises, including free tuition at public colleges and universities, including major new investments in healthcare. And, that would have all been put in jeopardy as well. And, Bernie has always been motivated by an agenda of helping people, helping working people, helping poor people. And then, for some kind of vanity benefit, gone in there and created a show at the convention. It's just not who he is.
Right, absolutely. And it definitely would have jeopardized his daily career in Congress or what have you.
Well, I think people understand that Bernie is, at the end of the day, somebody who's deeply committed to the issues he talks about. And there are a lot of people in politics for the right reason. We all know there's people in politics for the wrong reason. And it's never really been about him. And like I said, to go in there, make a big show, he would have done a lot of TV coverage, would have been, he would have had a lot of partisans online rooting for him. But to do that and to put in jeopardy either the election of Clinton, which we thought at that time was likely, but and to put Trump in office, or to jeopardize really substantial policy advances that he was working on getting done, he's a person who takes his responsibility very seriously, and it's not about ego or him. And I think, I agree. I think he made the right decision.
So he essentially he felt a huge responsibility he felt a huge weight that if he did do anything like that, Trump would win. And
No, look, absolutely, and you know, people at the time were saying, "Oh, that's crazy. Trump can't win anyway. So what's the harm?" And of course, we've seen that. In fact, Bernie was prescient in that regard, and that Trump did have the capacity to win. And you know, there were people inside our campaign. I was one of them. Certainly, Bernie was another. You know, we thought that Hillary Clinton would win, but we also thought, unlike many other people, that he could win. And that weighed a lot on Bernie. And you know, Bernie campaigned very hard for Secretary Clinton after the primaries were over. Not something that not everybody agreed with, and I did as well. And you know, it was to stop the danger that we're seeing now.
And speaking of you campaigning for her as well, there have been rumors that you were on her payroll. So can we clarify that?
Never got a nickel from anybody associated with the Clinton campaign at all.
Hear that, you guys? That makes me happy.
I have a lot of other online memes if you want. I never made $800,000 a month, which is another one that floats around. And then I'm not related by marriage or in any other way to Karl Rove. Also something that floats around online.
I haven't heard those ones.
Yeah, there you go.
That's awesome. Okay, how about, does Bernie drive a Lamborghini and own 5 homes?
No Lamborghini, I can tell you that. Does not own 5 homes.
So actually, speaking on a more humorous note, a lot of people, it seems like the biggest criticism people have about him running in 2020 is his age. So can you just touch on this whole ageist crap?
Look, anybody. It's I mean, to me it's a joke because I see him almost every day, and if anybody else up there can spend a day in Bernie Sanders' shoes and keep up with him, God bless him, because that guy has more energy than any 4 other people put together. I mean, I remember during the campaign in 2016 how all the young media folks who were following the campaign, they all had half-written a story about how he was too old and he had a light schedule and he didn't work very hard and took all these naps and stuff. I mean, I'll tell you, they threw him in the trash within a week. I mean, one of them came up to me and said, "Hey, when do we have lunch? It's not on the schedule." And I said, "Bernie doesn't eat lunch. He's like working through lunch. So if you want lunch, you better bring it." So, I mean, it's a joke, really. It's all about vigor, and if he decides to run, because he has not decided whether he's going to run or not, but if he does, I guarantee you, no other candidate will keep up with him.
Absolutely. So there is a lot of defeatism right now. There's a lot of people are feeling very hurt, very upset about everything going on. What do you say to those people? How do you get them to reinvigorate the movement and focus on all the importance of the candidates in 2018?
I got to tell you, people. I hear people talk like that, and it's incredible to me because in so many ways we're winning. Right? We are winning. And I'm talking about the progressives are winning. Issues that Bernie was talking about in 2015 that, people were like, "Oh, that's fantasy and stuff." These are now mainstays of Democratic Party politics. And that's all because of the movement and the people and Bernie. And, so to suggest that we're losing, and that we should all just pick up our cards and go home, it's so divorced from reality, right? And so are there setbacks? Are we getting everything we want? No. But, we're here in Pennsylvania, just had an event with John Fetterman. John Fetterman is the Democratic candidate for lieutenant governor. I mean, you look at what's going on in New York with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. You look at Ben Jealous, who's the Democratic nominee for governor in Maryland. You look at Stacey Abrams, the Democratic candidate for governor in Georgia. You look at somebody like Andrew Gillum, who's a candidate for governor in Florida. Like all over the country, there's just Bernie and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez were just out with a couple of great candidates in Kansas. I mean, Chua Garcia won the primary in Chicago. I mean, it's like over and over and over again. It's just like I was talking about Bernie about this. It's like they tried to we talk about Bernie bros, right? Like it's all these like young white boys who are like support Bernie and stuff. But like our movement knows no boundaries. It's not bounded by gender, it's not bounded by race, it's not bounded by sexual orientation, it's not bounded by geography. Like we are winning like everywhere, and folks should take heart of that. And these 2018 contests are extremely important, both the primaries and the general elections. And people have got to get out. They got to get off the couch. They got to get out. They got to knock on doors and help these candidates win, so that we can put a check on this Trump administration's extremism until we can get around to 2020 when we can finally send it back.
Absolutely. I think that's a really good point. We definitely need to focus on now, and that way we can hopefully get someone good in 2020 if we get those people in
Can't be
office.
hard to manage to be worse.
Well, that's a very good point. But also the good thing is, according to Jeff, we can have our ponies. Yay! Everyone gets a pony.
But it's not free. As I say, you know, someone said to me like, free this, free that. It's not free. Like, we pay taxes, right? So it's not free. It's included, right? Right now you pay your taxes and you're getting wars, and you're getting tax breaks for the rich, and you're getting all this stuff. That's what's currently included. I say we change up the prefix menu so that there's different things that are included, like free tuition at public colleges and universities, and Medicare for all. So it's not free. It's included. It included pony for everybody.
Yes. So if you want to leave our audience with something to take away from this, something to give them hope about where you see our movement going.
Yeah, look, folks, I would say, look, don't despair. Now, because we have come so far in so little time, the potential for this movement is unlimited. But it's going to require people to sort of step up, take the reins of it. You know, all these people running for office all over the country, people who have never run for office before. We met some of them tonight. Really incredible the amount of energy out there. But even then, you hear from those folks, oh, I feel a little isolated. So they shouldn't feel so isolated. People should get up, go out, support those candidates, knock on doors with them, go to their events. We're really making a tremendous change in this country. And I understand that it's difficult to see sometimes, but it's really happening.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for
my pleasure.
joining me again, and for being kind enough to humor me with another sit down.
Happy to do it.
Seriously, I'm not kidding. This book was so good, and I loved the audio version because it was in Jeff's voice, which made it all the more personal. But now I'm going to read this again and write notes in the margin like the nerd I am. But again, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
And
anytime.
any appearances people can look out for?
So it's you know, we're here on what is this, the 28th? Are we at the 28th?
Yes.
Yes, the 28th. So the 29th, I'll be in Northern Virginia with the Our Revolution group there, big group there in Northern Virginia. On the 30th, I'll be in New York City. So
Awesome.
Talking to folks there. I'm going to be down in Florida coming up next month. I believe I'm going to be at Brown University next couple months. I'll be at the University of Chicago. So we're getting around the country.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for watching. Again, I have candidates Monday, Wednesday, Friday next week. So thank you for watching, and thank you once more,
great
Jeff.
program.
Give our
Thank
love to Bernie
I
for
certainly
sure.
will. Yes, absolutely.